Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. Welcome to Jimmy at the Crossroads. We've made it to episode 70. On today's show, Jimmy Sengenberger will have his political thoughts on the Flynndicated Michael Flynn case with Max McGuire coming up on the show. Stay tuned. It's Jimmy at the Crossroads, episode 70.
And that, my friends, is how America was made great once again. Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics. Radio broadcaster master, now the celeb on the web. He's the smarty of the party. He's in cahoots with the grassroots. Jimmy at the Crossroads brings you thought-provoking commentary, hard-hitting interviews, original satire, and the best bumper music known to man. Jimmy at the Crossroads!
Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix, I said. Gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. People want answers, they want to understand. They come to the crossroads and Jimmy gives them the plan. I said, gonna talk money, gonna talk politics, great for all generations. Oh, what a great mix. I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of nonsense. Come on, Jimmy, what you got? Policy and markets, elections, current events.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another edition of Jimmy at the Crossroads, episode 70, I'm told. As we bring you engaging, intelligent talk, saying style in partnership with the Washington Examiner, I am Jimmy Sengenberger. Had to hear Biff sing it, making sense out of nonsense once again. Thanks for joining us, being a part of the program. Such a pleasure and a privilege to be with you as always today. We've got a good hour for you today here on the program. Thanks for joining us, being a part of the festivities. By the way, if you have not done so already, please do subscribe on YouTube Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads. Also, be sure to like me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, at Sang Center. You see it right on the screen. Sang with an E, not an A, Center on Twitter. In addition, on Facebook, Jimmy Sengenberger, media personality. Go, please like the page online. Jimmy Sengenberger, media personality, facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro. And, of course, there's the website, jimmyatthecrossroads.com. And right there you can join the membership program, Jimmy's Crossroads Club. You can also log on to members.Jimmy's Crossroads Club in order to sign up, get the perks, all the great things. Please do join the journey right here at the Crossroads. And then the incredible shop line at shop.jimmyatthecrossroads.com. Brand new merch on this site. Also, please do be sure to follow our friends at the Washington Examiner, washingtonexaminer.com, for the reporting and commentary, as well as their Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Please like, subscribe, all those good things. So great to be with you today. We'll be joined in just a bit by Max McGuire, Advocacy Director for Conservative-Daily.com and host of the Conservative Daily podcast. He will join us coming up in just a bit today. Also, we're going to talk during that conversation about Michael Flynn. He's been, shall we say, Flynndicated? Last night, everybody was abuzz in the conservative movement about how earlier in the day, Michael Flynn won his case before an appeals court. Interesting stuff going on there. We'll break it all down with Max McGuire coming up here in a bit. But first, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is trying to stoke more and more angst, anger, hatred, vitriol. We have seen, let's put up the video, across the country, statues torn down just in the days and weeks following massive riots. Statues defaced. People beaten on. We will show some of that here momentarily. In fact, let's do this. Cut 6. This is the beating of a state senator in Wisconsin, a Democratic state senator in Wisconsin, just in the last couple of days or nights, by so-called protesters that have gone violent. Take a look at this video. This is a state senator.
You leave my phone alone.
Delete it.
Leave my phone alone. They assaulted a state legislator in Wisconsin who happens to be a Democrat. And, you know, Nathan Matush, if you could drop in pick 5, because this is a tweet that was put out by Representative or State Senator, it was Representative, not State Senator, Representative Tim Carpenter, supporting Juneteenth and expressing his sentiments here about what was going on and the value of the protest, the value of standing up and speaking out on racial issues. And the tweet says, Juneteenth is a celebration of the liberation of slaves in the U.S., a reminder of the struggle of freedom that justice is not delivered by the signing of a document, but through the commitment of the American people to respect and fight for the rights of others. Celebrate Juneteenth, Freedom Day. He had other rhetoric. He's a Democrat. He's supporting the cause that those rioters, those vandals, those attackers, two, it looked like white women, by the way, who attacked him. He was attacked by those people who ostensibly support the same cause he says he supports. In other words, this vitriol, this hatred, this anger, this violence holds no real bounds. They'll go after blues guitar great Stevie Ray Vaughan and deface his statue. They'll tear down Ulysses S. Grant's statue. They'll tear down the statues of abolitionist leaders who led the fight to remove slavery from this country. And they will beat a state legislator who supports their cause. At least, supposedly, the cause that they advocate for. As we've talked about on this show, those engaging in violence and property destruction, looting, they're not advocating a cause. They're not serious actors. Now, I bring this all up not in a vacuum today, but to highlight the recklessness of Nancy Pelosi, Democratic Speaker of the House of Representatives, who was on MSNBC, I think, yesterday. And she essentially said that Republicans were responsible for the murder of George Floyd. Take a listen to this.
Now, you've echoed your Democratic colleagues who have said that the Republican bill is, in their words and in your words, unsalvageable. When you were speaking yesterday, you said that Republicans are, quote, trying to get away with murder, actually, the murder of George Floyd. Senate Republicans are demanding an apology for that statement. Will you apologize?
Absolutely, positively not. The fact is, people say, I think you, frankly, in the press have given them far too much credit for a bill that does nothing. They're saying, well, you have your bill, they have theirs. Yeah, our bill does something, theirs does nothing.
Is Tim Scott working in good faith, I guess?
I'm sorry? Well, we would hope
Is Tim Scott working in good faith? Is this a good starting point?
I'm talking about Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell could open this up again and have an open Judiciary Committee consideration of a bill where they could come together and get something done.
Pelosi, Republicans trying to get away with the murder of George Floyd. What? How does that kind of rhetoric not exacerbate the situation when already you literally have people attacking and destroying and defacing property and lives, people, human beings, supposedly for this kind of cause? And Nancy Pelosi has the audacity to say Republicans are trying to get away with the murder of George Floyd? Last I checked, it wasn't Republicans or Mitch McConnell who had their neck on, their knee on George Floyd's neck, extinguishing the life from him. I don't know, maybe those officers are Republican. That doesn't make them Republicans who did this. Certainly not in a way the Speaker of the House can say, or Mitch McConnell. Headline here, Susan Ferricchio, chief congressional correspondent at the Washington Examiner, reporting, quote, Democrats hope public pressure and civil unrest will force GOP to accept more drastic police reforms. It's not that Republicans are proposing a bill that does nothing. They're proposing a bill that does a bunch of things, just not necessarily what the Democrats want. That's not the same as nothing. And she literally means nothing of value, not just exaggerating the term nothing if you listen to her tone of voice. Chuck Schumer, minority leader in the U.S. Senate, saying, quote, I believe the Republican Party sees the handwriting on the wall. They see the American people feel, and they no doubt see that while the White House is going to succeed in passing a bill, the Senate won't. Or, well, the House is, going to succeed in passing a bill, the Senate won't. Trying to push for his own bill. But what they're doing is building upon the civil unrest running rampant in the streets across this country, especially at nighttime, and using that to push through their agenda and their points in a way that's reckless, and even saying, oh, Republicans trying to get away with the murder of George Floyd. Yeah, that's a great way to help things, Nancy, by basically saying, quite literally saying, Republicans are responsible for the murder of George Floyd. Reckless and irresponsible, especially when we do have this kind of rampant violence going on. Unacceptable. We need to run to a break. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner, bringing engaging, intelligent talk, Sang style. We're going to be joined in moments by Max McGuire of conservative-daily.com, advocacy director and host of the Conservative Daily podcast. Looking forward to chatting with Max about Michael Flynn being Flynndicated and more as we continue here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger.
America's politics are crazy. The culture is in flux. That's why we work hard to help you keep up.
More politics, more culture, and more access.
We focus on the biggest stories of the day with some of the biggest names in politics and punditry.
Go to our website, WashingtonExaminer.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Hi, Tom. Gee, you look terrible.
I feel terrible. Achy, fevery, nauseous.
Ooh, that's too bad. You know, you ought to...
Chills, stuffiness, bloating.
Yeah, you know...
Scratchy, gassy, drippy.
I know. Say, Tom, you should try Wearaflu.
Wearaflu?
Wearaflu is the only medication that actually takes your flu symptoms and hides them at various places inside your body so that by the time your body finds them all, your flu is gone. In the meantime, you're back to work.
You were right, Ed. Wearaflu lets me ignore my flu symptoms and gets me back to work. Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for coming in and infecting the rest of the office.
Come out wherever you are with Wearaflu. Take as directed.
And now, the further future adventures of Starship Winkler.
Thanks for coming to this medical convention with me, Captain. You're a true friend.
You promised there'd be green women.
Well, I'd like you to meet some of my colleagues. This is Dr. Scholes, podiatrist.
How do you do?
And this is Dr. Pepper.
Gesundheit.
Oh, and here comes Dr. Phil. He's a psychiatrist.
Well, every pancake has two sides. And
You're right, Doc. He is boring.
I'm right here.
And this is Dr. Spock, child psychologist.
Goodgy.
And of course, this is Dr. Octopus.
Oh, hello. How do you do?
How do you do?
How do you do? Hi, give me five. Pleased to meet you. Give me five. How do you do? So, Doc Ock, what's your field?
I am a proctologist.
Oh, I wish I hadn't shaken all 8 hands.
Well, did the captain bring enough hand sanitizer? Tune in next time when we hear...
And this is Dr. Quinn, medicine woman.
Finally, a woman.
Hey, how are ya? Hey, how are ya? Hey, how are ya?
Ugh. On Starship Winkler.
We interrupt this program for a very important presidential message.
I'm Donald Trump. As you know, people of America, the elections are coming up in November, and I have some very distressing news for you. Very distressing and disturbing. Did you know that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are both porch pirates? Do you know what that is? There's hundreds of hours of video evidence of Nancy Pelosi coming up on your porches and jujitsuing your precious packages. Well, Chuck Schumer waits in the street in the getaway van because he's too afraid to be a man and do his own dirty work. She has to do the dirty work just like she always does. Remember that this November when you go to vote, a Republican would never do that. He'd never take your precious little tot's choice. Never. And so think of that when you vote this November. Thank you very much. God bless and have a great day.
Breaking at this hour, Jimmy Sengenberger is currently at the crossroads of politics and economics.
Are you all right with being a shark maverick? Was it okay to team up with you?
I'm good, man. We're a part. It's a partnership. We're like this, Jimmy. I got you.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of nonsense.
Let's get back to your host of the Crossroads, Mr. Sang Style, Jimmy Sengenberger.
Rocking and rolling back here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. I am Jimmy Sengenberger, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner. Pleasure and a privilege to be with you. Thanks so much for joining us, being a part of the program. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimmy at the Crossroads on YouTube, youtube.com/Jimmy at the Crossroads, and also spread the word, share it, pass it along. And the Facebook page, too, Jimmy Sengenberger Media Personality, facebook.com/Jimmy Sengenberger Pro. So great to be with you today, again, in partnership with the Washington Examiner, which you can check out at washingtonexaminer.com, and like, subscribe, follow all those good things for them, too, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So, we got some word yesterday that was pretty darn positive. Michael Flynn, former national security advisor for President Trump, who had been unjustly, and I think a case can strongly be made illegally, surveilled and investigated by the Obama administration and then still by the FBI even after President Obama left office, it seems. He was vindicated, Flynndicated, shall we say, in essence, by an appeals court yesterday that ruled in his favor. That is saying the case should indeed be dismissed, the case against him, that Judge Emmett Sullivan, lower court judge, district judge, had been trying to drag on, I think, inappropriately. Let's dive in to this very topic of conversation today, get a good sense for what's going on with this Michael Flynn case, where things are at, how we got here, with Max McGuire, who is advocacy director at conservative-daily.com and the host of the Conservative Daily podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and all your favorite podcast locations. Max rejoins us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. My friend, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It's great to have you, as always. So this is pretty big yesterday. I've got some sound I want to play and whatnot, but just kind of fill us in on what's going on here. What do we know now?
Sure. So as you know, the Trump administration had petitioned to basically drop the case, saying that Michael Flynn never should have been prosecuted, never should have gotten as far as it did. So they basically made a motion to withdraw the charges. The judge in the case didn't want to do that. So the judge hired another judge to argue that it should keep going. They took it all the way to the appeals court, and the appeals court ruled yesterday 2-1 that no, if the government drops the case and the accused wants to recant their guilty plea, you can't just keep prosecuting them, and you can't hire some outside attorney and judge to prosecute the case on the government's behalf. It's very obvious. If the government doesn't want to prosecute you for something, a judge isn't allowed to go hire someone else to stand in as the government. It's a very basic thing that shouldn't have even been in question. But the interesting thing is that the judge in this case, he actually sent a motion, a request back to the appeals court, because typically appeals court rulings don't go into full effect until I think it's 20-21 days after they're signed, because that gives other appeals court judges time to review it and see if they want to request an en banc hearing. So technically it isn't in full effect. So we're already seeing the judge in this case trying to weasel his way in to see if he can keep this going a little longer. It's pretty shameful.
It's so transparent that Judge Sullivan is trying to do everything he can to keep Michael Flynn from being permanently set free and able to go live his life. It's like there's a vendetta going on here when you literally hire a third-party guy, a former judge, to step in. You know you're not being fair and impartial as the Constitution requires.
Yeah, no, it's Judge Sullivan. He was the guy who, one day after, I think it was Rachel Maddow called Flynn a traitor and accused him of treason, the very next day from the bench, Judge Sullivan repeated those talking points out of nowhere, accused Michael Flynn of treason, which was not something that the government was even arguing. So this guy obviously is a partisan. He doesn't like, I can understand the argument that he doesn't like his time being wasted. I don't think anyone likes their time being wasted, but you can't do this. And the fact that you can't just say like, oh no, I think he should still be prosecuted, even though no one wants to prosecute the case. I'm going to hire someone else to do it for you. You just can't do that. We don't live in that kind of society. That's what you see in like Soviet Russia or other dictatorships. You don't see that here, and there's a reason for that.
Well, yeah, Max McGuire. I mean, it's basically like the judge decided, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure this case continues to be prosecuted in the way that I want to. And that's not the role of a judge. A judge is supposed to adjudicate these kinds of things, not get involved in deciding the direction that they will go through the proceedings and what arguments are actually on a basic level. I mean, sure, he can dismiss certain things and say, no, you're not allowed to enter this evidence, or you're not allowed to make this particular argument because it's not based on this or that. That's not at all what he's doing here. But I want to play something that was pretty exciting yesterday in Cut 4. Michael Flynn himself called in to Rush Limbaugh's show yesterday and expressed some enthusiasm. And I just want to give a taste because I feel so badly for how he's been treated and so pleased with this outcome. But I just hope that it really manifests itself in the end in a complete Flynndication, and that it's not, there's no legal mumbo jumbo that turns things around. But take a listen here.
And, obviously the fight's not over, as you've been highlighting for not just today, but for a long time.
Right.
And what the decision today is really, it's a good thing for General Flynn. It's a good thing for me. It's a good thing for my family. But it's really a great boost of confidence for the American people in our justice system, because that's what this really comes down to, is whether or not our justice system is going to have the confidence of the American people in it. And boy,
well,
your listeners know this.
You had to have your doubts in it for the longest time. I can't imagine what it's been like.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll maybe there'll be another time that we can get into the details of it, but I will just tell you that I have always believed and fought for our rule of law. The most important thing that we have in this country, bar none, is that. And we have to make it work, whether we like it or not, and it has to work with the right people and the right leaders.
It's so encouraging just to hear Max McGuire, again, host of the Conservative Daily podcast. It's so encouraging to hear Michael Flynn be able to express that kind of well-earned, well-deserved enthusiasm after years of being put through the ringer unjustly.
Yeah, it is. It was funny as I'm listening to that. I almost, when I first heard that he was coming out, I thought maybe it's his son, since he referred to himself in the third person, as this is a great thing for General Flynn.
And then he said me. He said me.
Yeah, and then he said me. So I guess when you've been through what he's been through, you're allowed to refer to yourself in the third person. I'll give him a pass on that. But he's absolutely right. And one of the hallmarks of our judicial system is when you're accused of a crime, you have the right to be given all of the evidence against you. Not only evidence against you, but evidence that could prove your innocence. The government's supposed to already have weighed that, but if the government charges you with the crime, you're supposed to get everything. And one of the most egregious parts of this whole process is to see how the evidence that the government has against Flynn and proving his innocence wasn't given to him. It's had to be trickled out slowly as Flynn and his legal team have filed motions demanding its release. So it's pretty scummy that this happened to him, because if he had the documents that we've seen released yesterday and the past couple weeks, if he had them at the time that he pled guilty, he probably wouldn't have pled guilty, because these were exculpatory documents that proved, or at least suggested, his innocence that he could have been able to use to his advantage. So that's what I think is the biggest takeaway. Yeah, you had crazy people in the FBI and DOJ trying to go after him, but you also had this hiding of evidence to stop him from actually mounting a legal defense.
Now, then we learned something pretty stunning yesterday as well, which is Joe Biden and Barack Obama apparently knew more about the Flynn investigation than anybody was trying to let on with the release. In Pick 1, we've got these notes that were uncovered that I'm so stunned that they actually are saying, we didn't really know that much. We weren't paying attention. This wasn't our thing, so on and so forth. But Max McGuire, what these notes, and I'm trying to find where I have the transcript here in front of me, but I know you know it well. Can you summarize it for us, what it said?
Yeah, sure. So it's chicken scratch, but these are handwritten notes that were written by Peter Strzok, who was that FBI lovebird. Not only did he let Hillary Clinton off the hook, but he's the one who launched the whole Trump investigation. He was the one having an affair with Lisa Page. basically saying we're going to defeat Trump by any means necessary. He's writing down these notes, relaying what's being told to him by James Comey himself. James Comey was in the room, Strzok wasn't. So Comey's telling Strzok what happened, and Strzok in real time is writing these chicken scratch notes just for his own memory to be able to recall what Comey told him. And so they're talking about the Flynn calls. They're asking whether there are other countries involved. And then you have Comey and Yates saying that we should lean forward on something unclassed. Don't know what that means. But then you have Biden. Biden is being mentioned as bringing up the Logan Act, which is a law that was passed in 1799, which makes it a federal crime for a civilian to negotiate with a foreign country on the United States' behalf. Now, that law has never been successfully prosecuted, not once, because it is unconstitutional. You have a First Amendment right to free speech. You cannot criminalize that speech because you're talking to a foreign government official. So it's never been prosecuted. And yet Joe Biden, we now know from these notes that Joe Biden is the one who brought it up. And then President Obama says, well, these are unusual times, almost as if he's setting the pretext for all this, that this is unusual, but these are unusual times. We have every right to do this. Then Biden says, I've been on the Intel committee for 10 years, and I presume he says, I never saw anything like this. And then Obama says, and this is one of the key parts, make sure you look at things and have the right people on it. And then he asks, is there anything I shouldn't be telling the transition team? And Comey says, the Flynn and Kislyak calls appear legit. And then they say something about Happy New Year and yeah, right. So these notes are very important because up until this point, we knew from Sally Yates, when Sally Yates, she was the Deputy Attorney General under Obama, and her testimony, we know from her testimony and the interview she gave with FBI investigators that she pegged Comey as the one who brought up the Logan Act. Comey denied it. He said someone else in the room brought up the Logan Act. Now from these notes, which aren't Comey's notes, but it's Comey retelling the story to another FBI employee, these notes show us that, at least according to Comey, it was Joe Biden who brought up the Logan Act. And it was Obama who said, look into this.
Wait.
And make sure you put the right people on it.
Hold up. Get me back on the screen, Nathan Matoush, because I'm going to object. I'm going to object here to what Max was just saying. There's no way Biden said that. He told George Stephanopoulos in Cut 2, a couple of months ago, that he didn't know more than that this investigation was underway.
I do want to ask you about Michael Flynn, the former National Security Advisor to President Trump, and the move by the Justice Department last week to dismiss the case against him for lying to the FBI. The president said yesterday that move is justified because President Obama targeted Flynn. He called it, quote, the biggest political crime in U.S. history. Your former Senate colleague Charles Grassley has added that Flynn was entrapped and asked on the Senate floor, what did Obama and Biden know? When did they know it? So what did you know about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, and was there anything improper done?
I know nothing about those moves to investigate Michael Flynn, number one. Number two, this is all about diversion.
I do want to press that. You say you didn't know anything about it, but you were reported to be at a January 5th, 2017 meeting where you and the president were briefed on the FBI's plan to question Michael Flynn over those conversations he had with the Russian ambassador Kislyak.
No, I thought you asked me whether or not I had anything to do with him being prosecuted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was aware that they asked for an investigation, but that's all I know about it, and I don't think anything else.
Max, Joe Biden, he assured us he was only aware that there was an investigation. That's it.
Yeah, no, he's a liar. He's a liar, but most likely he actually doesn't remember. I mean, I don't think Joe Biden remembers what he ate for breakfast yesterday.
It's probably true.
So in fairness, he might just not remember. But then again, when someone commits treason, you'd think that maybe it gets stored in their long-term memory. No, this is a complete lie. And even Joe Biden's apology was a lie too. He said, I knew that they asked for the investigation. These notes show that the Deputy Attorney General and Comey were in the room, but it wasn't they that asked for the investigation. It was Obama that said, look into this and make sure you put the right people on it. And it was Joe Biden that recommended this track looking into Logan Act violations. So it's a complete lie. It's funny when Donald Trump brings this up and he says that Barack Obama and Joe Biden may have committed treason. The mainstream media runs the comment and then says, but Trump provided no evidence. You have to be hiding under a rock to be able to write that headline or to want to deliberately mislead people. This is the President of the United States ordering an investigation into an incoming administration, and it's the vice president of the United States who, as we've talked about on the show before, doesn't actually have any power. The vice president, other than breaking a tie in the Senate, the only thing he's there for is if the president becomes incapacitated. But the vice president is recommending that the Justice Department look into a 1799 law that has never successfully been prosecuted. We want to talk about independence in investigations. The vice president has no business recommending that the DOJ and FBI investigate someone on a 1799 crime. There's no legitimate reason for it.
Well, but Max McGuire, let me add this point too, which is recall that John Kerry had been doing, I think, under this current president, Donald Trump. The former Secretary of State, John Kerry, was literally going over and trying to negotiate with Iran. And that was not where he was incoming into an administration. Keep in mind, when this was happening, Michael Flynn was being investigated by the FBI. He was the incoming national security advisor, having conversations that were particularly reasonable for an incoming national security advisor to have with a foreign government, as opposed to John Kerry, who was a former Secretary of State. Max McGuire.
Yeah, I understand that makes sense. The challenge is that everyone has a free speech right. You have the right to talk to someone without that speech being criminalized. Obviously, unless you are delivering some kind of direct call to violence. You have the right to speak your mind, and it's not criminal if you speak your mind to a foreign power. Where John Kerry gets into serious trouble is that he wasn't just talking to a foreign power, he was giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Right? We're not just talking about his speech being criminalized. He was telling Iran, don't negotiate with Trump, because if Trump loses, you'll have Democrats in power and it'll be better off for you. That's giving aid and comfort to the enemy, which, as long as you have a couple witnesses, that can be prosecuted as treason. So there is a little bit of a difference there, and you're right, between an incoming administration and someone who hasn't been in government for years. But yeah, no, Kerry has a lot more to worry about than Flynn ever did.
Yeah. Again, Max McGuire, our guest, advocacy director, conservative-daily.com, and host of the Conservative Daily podcast. Let's go to Cut 5 here. This is Sidney Powell, who is Michael Flynn's lawyer, talking about the whole Biden wrinkle to this story.
It is absolutely terrifying, Lou, to think that this would go on in the United States of America. And these notes are simply damning, whether it was a phone conversation or a meeting or how it was conducted. The notes are clear in raising significant issues for Vice President Biden and, of course, Mr. Obama and their role in orchestrating and instructing and making sure this entire operation was carried out. It's just terrific.
And to suggest that, as the president did, no, just not to suggest, he said straight out, be sure the right people are on this case. I'm not sure what that means. Do you have any idea? Because frankly, it sounds rather sinister.
It does. I think really that's the only way to take it, is he's saying, you know, make sure that people who are going to carry through into the next administration are on it, people that Mr. Comey and Mr. Obama could trust to make it come out the right way. I mean, there's really no reason for them to be having this conversation in the first place. It simply shouldn't have happened.
You know, I have to say, Sidney Powell is a class act. She's done a phenomenal job. I mean, she was dealt a very difficult hand in the sense of having to do so much investigatory work on her own and with her own folks, as opposed to having the FBI actually do its job responsibly.
Yeah, no, she's absolutely right. And the way you know that Obama wasn't meaning that to be like, make sure you have someone impartial, make sure you have someone fair, because these notes show that immediately after the meeting, James Comey delegated that responsibility to Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok, the guy who literally, we have text messages basically saying that they went to a Walmart in Virginia and he could smell the Trump support in the air. Right, that's the kind of people. So you can't argue that they delegated it to the fair, minded people in the FBI, because these notes show that it was being delegated to Peter Strzok, the most partisan of them all.
You know, I could go into Whole Foods and smell the Hillary support back in 2016. So, Max McGuire, one thing that I think is important to kind of get out there is President Trump and his reaction and how he's looking at all of these kinds of things, whether it's Flynn, but also just the mere fact that you had the FBI investigating a candidate for president of the United States, and then the guy who was actually elected president of the United States. Let's go to cut 3. This is President Donald Trump talking about how his campaign was being spied upon.
On Obama and the spying situation, this idea that they were spying on your campaign, you've been asked before about what crime he would have potentially committed, but I remember you talking to
treason.
Treason. That's what I was going to ask.
It's treason. Look, look. When I came out a long time ago, I said, they've been spying on my campaign. I said, they've been taping, and that was in quotes, meaning a modern-day version of taping. It's all the same thing, but a modern-day version. But they've been spying on my campaign. I told you that a long time ago. Turned out I was right. Let's see what happens to him now. Durham is... I never met Durham, because I want to stay out of it, because otherwise it's going to look political. But Durham, as you know, is a highly respected person, and Bill Barr is doing a great job as Attorney General. Let's see what they come up with. But they don't have to tell me. All I have to do is read the papers, the insurance policy. In case she doesn't win, we got an insurance policy. Well, that was all the stuff that we went through over the last, let's say, 2.5 years. Now we caught him. We caught him called Strzok and Page, the two lovers. Brennan and Clapper, the way they lie.
As we wrap up with you, Max McGuire, I want your reaction to that, and especially because this is, what we're talking about with Michael Flynn, is part of a much bigger tapestry of events investigating President Trump's campaign in 2016 and even after, during the transition time period. Now, I think treason's a bit much for the president to throw out that word. I wouldn't if I were him. But other than that, he was pretty much on point.
Yeah, treason is tough because treason has two legal definitions, either taking up arms against the United States or, as I mentioned before, giving aid and comfort to the enemy, which probably wouldn't apply in this scenario. But you could easily turn to a statute like 18 U.S.C. Section 242, which is deprivation of rights under color of law, colloquially known as abuse of power. The idea that someone is abusing their power in government, and to create an investigation that they act like it's legitimate, but it has illegitimate reasons, right? So there's no way to argue that through this whole ordeal that Michael Flynn didn't have his rights violated. The rights were violated under the pretext of it being a legitimate investigation, but we know now that it went all the way to the top, that this was a witch hunt, this was a sham investigation from the start. So the real question is not whether he had his rights violated. It's not whether 18 USC Section 242 was violated. The question is, who are they going to be able to pin that crime on? And the fact that we have these notes now that go all the way up to Obama and Biden themselves. Listen, I don't know if you're going to get Biden thrown in handcuffs, but it's going to be really hard to argue that the White House wasn't involved when they're the ones egging on and actually ordering the investigation.
Yeah, I would be surprised if Joe Biden gets put into handcuffs over this. But, you know, crazy things happen in the year 2020, so you never know what might take place. Max McGuire, about to go live at Conservative Daily on the podcast. It was great being on your show yesterday as well, so kind of a show swap this week.
Yeah, it was fun. When we go live at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So you can find us on facebook.com/Conservative Daily, all one word.
And we're going to get that link into the podcast description coming up here in a bit. So Max McGuire, thanks for joining us, my friend, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Once again, Max McGuire, host of the Conservative Daily podcast, joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads as we break down what's going on here with Michael Flynn. And make no mistake, this was a complete miscarriage of justice, how Michael Flynn had been treated. Basically, he had a phone call with the Russian ambassador when they were watching the Russians, monitoring Russian Ambassador Kislyak's conversations. And Michael Flynn was discovered to have participated in the calls. They heard him. And they decided to go after him and go after the Trump campaign and do all that they could to, this was the FBI, to railroad this guy, to unmask him, getting his name out there, and to incessantly insist upon this in such a way where even the president, then President of the United States, Barack Obama, and then Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden, both together in this meeting were essentially conspiring on what needed to be done in order to further the investigation, and even wondering aloud, what should or shouldn't we tell the transition team, the Trump transition team, who were preparing to make that transition into the White House. This was a guy who'd already won the presidency, Donald Trump. By the time this, January 7th, 2017 meeting was happening, he was 13 days away from being sworn in as President of the United States. And the previous administration was doing whatever they could to undercut him in these ways. No wonder he's frustrated and been frustrated from the start, President Trump. No wonder Michael Flynn felt so enthusiastic enough to call in to Rush Limbaugh's radio show. We've interviewed Sidney Powell on this program a few months ago. I mean, this was a miscarriage of justice until now, and hopefully Judge Emmett Sullivan, who's done everything he could to get away with obstructing the dismissal of this case, when the Justice Department and the accused both say it should be dismissed. And yet this judge, Judge Emmett Sullivan, has the audacity to hire a former judge, and say, I want you to present the case for why this shouldn't be dismissed. And yet last night it was a 2-1 vote, or yesterday it was a 2-1 vote on that appeals court. One of the three judges even said, no, you shouldn't just go ahead and dismiss this, which is very concerning in the United States of America today. A miscarriage of justice indeed, but one that it seems is on the road to being rectified, and rightly so. Judge Sullivan, how he's addressed this has just been absolutely horrendous. And one way or another, he probably should be held into account. At a minimum, by losing this case that he's essentially trying to prosecute, by doing everything he can to prevent it from being dismissed. When he's a judge, he's supposed to be an adjudicator. One side and the other present their positions. Argue them out. Well, both sides happen to agree here, but he doesn't, so he brings somebody else in. Congratulations to Michael Flynn being Flynndicated. I hope that it continues, and that Judge Sullivan isn't able to somehow weasel his way into being successful in not getting this case dismissed when it absolutely should be dismissed. Keep in mind that the FBI didn't tell Michael Flynn when they sat down with him that he was a suspect. So he didn't have a lawyer present. And they asked him gotcha questions in different ways, and they managed to entrap him in essence. It's disgraceful. And hopefully justice will indeed be done here, as it seems to be. I'm Jimmy Sengenberger. That is it for us today here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. We will be back tomorrow working up what we've got for Free to Choose Friday. My thanks to Max McGuire of Conservative Daily. Check him out on Facebook. We're going to end YouTube and podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Be sure to check it out. We'll get the links up in the YouTube and Facebook descriptions. My thanks to Nathan Matouche, producer extraordinaire, for doing his level best here, and to the Washington Examiner, and to you for joining us, being a part of the program. Members.jimmyatthecrossroads.com, by the way. Be sure to sign up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share everything, too. Thanks so much. Stay well, stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless America.